please.
Awesome. Well, welcome everybody to this monthly discussion on gender equity. The Employer Rights Center with the Kim Center on Social Balance is hosting this monthly discussion as we've done for 4 months, as we were just discussing a moment ago. We cannot understate the need to have this kind of discussion. We see it every day at what we do here at the center. We are a resource worker center who was founded in 1999. And like then and now, we feel that there is a very important thing to be said about having presence and giving free or low-cost professional services to everybody who needs it. And one of those things that we have found over the years is that one of the most unrepresented, least thought about groups are women in this county. We see it every day in every aspect of work. Some of them are very successful: attorneys, doctors, teachers, professors, who, when they are having a private discussion, are talking about how they can never really become the head of the project. No matter how many years they worked on it, they just cannot find a way of becoming the main person. And everything else under that. And so our position is that what we espouse every day is that we need to have gender equity. I think this is why our relationship with the Kim Center, and especially with the founding and president, is president, correct? I always say CEO, Hei-ock, Dr. Hei-ock, who, as I said, she is the founder and president of that center, is such an important collaboration for us. We are nowhere near, in our opinion, where we need to be in having the voice and representation in the tables where real decisions are being made in this county, where there is enough women or there is gender equity of any sort. And whenever we espouse this, we tend to get this response from people on the opposite side of this discussion, which always puzzles me. Who's on the opposite side of having more women and other genders in the tables where it really matters, where decisions are being made? It always puzzles me. But I tend to get this same answer. Well, you social justice people, you people that want rights, you people, isn't the right way of doing this is just making it based on merit, based on who's better for the job? And I always respond the same thing. Thanks for making my point for me. You did it very well. Because we see that whenever you do include women, and when you ever do include other genders, which the research that the Kim Center has at the website completely and directly bears this out at every possible level. If somebody wanted to debate this, the answer to, in our opinion, for the Employer Rights Center is the debate is over. We need diversity in boards. We need diversity in representative electoral positions. We need diversity in the way we think about how do we search out things. And I will just say one thing, a little comment from popular culture. People in business are very familiar with this show called the Shark Tank. You probably have all heard about it. And then there is this, apparently this sort of figure there, or person there. His name, he goes by, I think his name is O'Leary. Kevin O'Leary, I think is his name. In a recent interview, he said, look, I'm actually not a supporter of gender equity. I'm not. But I got to tell you, of the people, we did a survey of the people that we invest in and that have been productive and made money, 100% of them are women. So had I known that when I have candidates, now I know that if I want to have a better success rate, I'm going to invest in women. And he prefaced it by saying, I'm not even a supporter of that idea. It just works. This is what we believe in. If you're really going to be successful, you really have to have that diversity. You really have to have those voices, because for justice reasons, discrimination, bullying, all these things, but also because we really want to improve. We really want to have a thriving economy, and for that, we need a higher presence of women in all industries, and in the real estate industry, I think we're going to discuss today. So, with no further ado, we're very happy to be co-host with the Kim Center, and I will pass it on to my co-host to um, drive this discussion, and we'll be right here in case you need anything. And welcome everybody for being in this discussion.
Thank you, Alor. We are grateful and honored for our partnership with Employee Rights Center. The Kim Center for Social Balance is a San Diego nonprofit, and our mission is to nationally accelerate the achievement of equal status for all genders in the workplace. And to clarify, we prioritize the situation for women because women are the largest and also the most influential group in every marginalized population. But we definitely analyze for and call out significant issues at multiple intersections, and that includes race and ethnicity, sexual orientation, disability status, etc. And with that, I will launch into the discussion. So the CREW 2020 benchmark report on gender and diversity in commercial real estate, and I am putting that link in the chat for anybody who wants to have it, indicates that commercial real estate is still a white male-dominated industry. At the same time, there are signs of cultural shift. Today, I'm joined by 4 leaders in the field to continue shining the light on the industry's shortcomings, particularly toward women at multiple intersections, as I said before, but also to suggest actionable steps for creating and recognizing positive change. Cecilia Hyun is a partner with the law firm Siegel Jennings Co. LPA. She focuses on real estate tax assessment in Ohio for all commercial property types. Cecilia is a past president of CREW Cleveland and served as co-chair of the 2020 CREW Network Industry Research Committee, working on the report that I just mentioned before. Welcome, Cecilia. Garland Fuller is a senior member of CBRE's People Diversity Recruiting Team in Los Angeles. Her podcast, Full Circle with Garland, addresses social impact, inclusion, and sustainable wealth building. She serves on the board of African American Real Estate Professional Los Angeles, the advisory board of Real Estate Association of Latinx, and the Urban Land Institute Los Angeles Urban Plan Committee. Welcome, Garland. Shannon Kale is Senior Vice President of Human Resources at Realty Income. After 25 years in HR, she's still passionate about helping people manage the diverse passages encountered in the work environment and impacting top and bottom line organizational results. She maintains an Associate Certified Coach designation. Thanks for being here, Shannon.
Thank you.
And we also have Catherine Northcutt, who oversees community outreach, recruitment, and admissions for the Master of Science in Real Estate program at the University of San Diego School of Business. She also supports DEI initiatives from multiple groups, including CREW San Diego, Urban Land Institute, and USD. She's a California licensed real estate agent and ACC ICF certified coach dedicated to creating profound change in business, higher education, and society. Welcome and thank you to you all for being here. We'll start with Cecilia. The CREW report revealed kind of discouraging news. There's only been slight progress for women in the industry over the past 15 years. They make up, we'll just start with the bad news. They make up 1/3 of the workforce and are still less likely than men to reach top positions. And only 13% of the survey's respondents identified as people of color and 3% as LGBTQIA+. This is all despite decades of research pointing to higher productivity and profitability in companies that have more equitable environments. So, what will it take for employers to internalize the tangible benefits of diversity enough to elevate workplace equity to a business priority?
So just to start with a little bit of a background on the study itself, Crew Network, which is a global multidisciplinary commercial real estate association, every 5 years they partner with the MIT Center for Real Estate to research and benchmark progress for women in the industry. And for the first time in the last report that came out in 2020, they asked questions to benchmark diversity. And you're right that the data in the 2020 report was startling in how slow the progress seems to have been. One of the positive points that did come out of the 2020 report, which you alluded to earlier, is that over half of the survey respondents, I think about 56%, did report that they had noticed a culture shift in their workplace around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the research didn't reveal that it was one factor in particular that drove the change. There were a number of things. So I think for employers to make the realization that you're talking about, the change is going to have to be initiated on multiple fronts. So, the data showed that some of the change was driven by leadership changes, leadership really prioritizing diversity, equity, and inclusion, allocating resources to it, giving it a budget, holding people accountable. Then some of the change was initiated by outside pressure from clients or customers or other, people that want to do business with organizations that whose priorities around diversity align with theirs. Then some of the change was driven, internally by employees who are more and more identifying diverse workplaces as an important factor in deciding where they want to work. And I think going forward, it is going to be more important for talent retention and talent acquisition. And then, of course, there's always data and research like the benchmark study, which I think helps to crystallize some of these clearly ongoing inequities. It's one thing to kind of feel or maybe know anecdotally that there's a gender pay gap, but it's quite different to see in black and white the data from the study that shows, in fact, the difference in bonus compensation between men and women is 56%. So I think, as you said, there's been years of research now on the business benefits of diversity, but it seems to now be reaching a point where it's in the public consciousness. To Alora's story regarding Shark Tank, people are realizing, even if maybe it wasn't a priority for them, sort of as the right thing to do, that it is becoming more clear that it has clear business benefits. So hopefully, as more and more of these different areas encourage change, employers will come to that realization.
Thank you, Cecilia. And yeah, it is amazing to have those resources of data because they do make it black and white. I mean, just like Shark Tank looked back on the statistics, their eyes, or that person's eyes, were not opened until they actually looked at the data. On the other hand, Shannon, sometimes certain groups feel threatened or blamed when faced with addressing unconscious bias, and that creates a less tangible but still very real obstacle to cultural evolution. What are some ways to normalize a company culture where people feel safe enough to embrace change and start contributing to the process?
Yeah, so I think where everyone should start in this journey is with data. And data will tell you where you are, and it'll help you out. It'll help you figure out where you need to go. And I think both qualitative and quantitative research to understand what the current workplace experience is like from an employee perspective is the right place to start. And then I think as you naturally move on from there, education through training and certainly modeling how to talk about issues through internal and external communication. Let employees learn of the company's commitment through actions the company's taking. And equally as important, employees need to see the right behaviors from leadership. So people need to see, hear, and experience what an inclusive culture feels like and participate in that DE&I journey. And I think where it emulates from is at the top. The top of the organization has to model, be invested in, measure, and be held accountable to gender equality and all facets of DE&I. So does the board hear a regular report on DE&I, and is it part of the company's objectives? How does leadership measure progress? The quantifiable measures are very self-evident, but most DE&I efforts fail in the inclusion dimension. So as you think about culture, inclusion is a lot more nuanced, and it takes longer to make it part of your culture. So things like, does the company leadership take an active role in mentoring women, both through formal programs and informally? Does the company leadership model the right behaviors, which should be grounded in company values? So is there an underlying universal respect for all people in the workplace? Are there consequences for inappropriate action and behaviors? So if you can answer, the questions that I'm asking, then the thing to really help enable the culture is encouraging people to speak up. And when the people speak up, they don't have a fear of reprisal, for blaming, for shaming. And so people feel like they have a voice. In the end, every person, regardless of gender, race, ethnicity, disability, sexual orientation, all the statuses, all they want is to belong and matter. So if you ask yourself and you ask others, do they feel like they belong? Do they feel like they matter? And the answer is yes, then you're on the right path.
Great, thank you, Shannon. And I know you're implementing a lot of this in your own company. Catherine, commissions represent the highest earnings potential in commercial real estate. The Crew report says women only earn about half of what their male counterparts are earning in commissions. What are some of the identifiable barriers that exist for women in the industry that prevent more equitable earnings?
Thank you, Dr. Kim. Yes, according to the Crew report, the bonus and commission gap is significant. As Cecilia said, it's 56%. And so I want to recap the report and then look at the barriers. Women on average, make 56% less than men, according to the report, in commissions and bonuses. White women earn 51% less than men. Black women earn 71% less than men. Asian earn 73% less, and Hispanic Latinx earn 74% less. In the report, it identifies the top 5 barriers. They are lack of promotion opportunity, gender discrimination, lack of company mentor or sponsor or sponsor, woman's choice to maintain work and life balance, and constraints resulting in family and or parenting responsibilities. In reviewing the top barriers across the last 3 reports since 2005, it's every 5-year report, it's interesting to note that the lack of promotion opportunity and the lack of company mentor sponsorship were consistently in the top 1 or 2 as a barrier. It's also interesting to note that the men who responded in this report show that the lack of company mentor sponsor, so the lack of company and mentor sponsor for men had dropped to the number 5 position in the last 2 studies. So it's at the bottom, whereas the women's at the top and has consistently remained there. I think the question that I often hear is, what do we need to do to navigate, what do we as women need to do to navigate the barriers? And I just want to say that I think that we need to sort of expand this to, when we're looking at equity, to asking the question, yes, what do we want to do and need to do as women, but also what can our companies that do to help dissolve these barriers and to build up that equity? And that's the question I think that we're asking today, is to better understand what that looks like. I'd also like to share that the report suggested a few dynamics that are going on that might explain these barriers, including to explain the disparity, including possible gender bias in hiring, possible disparities in commission sharing arrangements. Women may not be getting access to high profile clients and or the most profitable projects and deals. And it also mentioned what they call a self-driven dynamic for women, that women tend to be more risk averse and less likely to take on the 100% commission-based positions. So in summary, women are experiencing many barriers, and what they have stated that would assist them in building more equity is to give the attention to gender bias, gender discrimination, and providing promotional opportunities and mentor and sponsorship opportunities. I'd just like to say that, you know, as I look at this in my role in recruiting and admissions at USD, we're really focused on, you know, our part of this whole is to be working with students and building a pipeline for the next generation of commercial real estate professionals. And we are working to do that. And one of the ways that I'm doing that personally is when I speak to a lot of men, and one of the challenges for recruiting is that there are many women. We have one woman in the cohort right now. That is not the gender equity we want to see. But I'm listening to support that. I'm listening with curiosity to every prospective student that I'm talking to, men and women. And what I'm listening to is really to their histories and to their experiences, really getting to a much more granular level to see really what is impacting them, and you know, where did they learn about this program? How did they learn? So I'm gathering that kind of data. It's not formal research, but it is something that I'm paying attention to. Also, what we're doing at USD is that we do understand the value of mentorship and sponsorship, and that is occurring for our undergraduates and graduates for real estate. Very heavy emphasis on mentorship and sponsorship. Finally, it's important that we reach out to our high schools with our youth who may not even know about commercial real estate. And this is something that I have not seen a system for really deep reaching into high schools to expose them to real estate and commercial real estate. And so this is something else that's on our minds as we're educating students.
Thank you, Catherine. And the issue of mentorship and sponsorship you bring up is also very interesting because it gets at the value of talent that those who would be in a position to mentor or sponsor see in, you know, prospective successors to themselves or people they feel should have better places in the industry. So Garland, are there policies or standards or practices that can be put into place to encourage a culture of valuing diverse contributions?
Yes. I mean, I think Catherine mentioned a lot of the things that people want to see. And when you go to the report, you can tell, you know, what are the things that are job satisfaction. And what you see is, you know, having, you know, access to leaders, having access to mentors. So how do you get that? Employee resource groups and employee network groups are, in some organizations, they've been around for a while. At CBRE, we've had a women's network for about 20 years. And so in companies like ours, where, you know, it's kind of women have gotten together and said, we need to create a network for ourselves in order for us to see each other outside of just, you know, if your organization is fairly new to this and you haven't, you know, an affinity group is new, you know, getting that started, I think, is a huge part of it. I mean, I think that's why Crew has been so influential, because for many, that has been the space that women have had to, you know, come together in order to find mentors and sponsors and just, you know, have another group that can understand your experience in the workplace. And then when you look at, you know, flexible work arrangements, I think what's been so interesting about this working from home that we've had lately is that for some women, this has always been their reality, working from home. And for some, this is totally new. And then even now with childcare and caregiving being still very much of a women's space, without COVID, I think it allows for some opportunity for you to have more control over your day and your time. I think in a COVID environment, it has become a pressure cooker situation. And so a lot of women are just feeling the overwhelm and the burnout that comes with, being on at work and at home. And now you're at home, so you're feeling like you're on all the time. And so I mention this because I did an episode on my podcast about this. And I think, it crops up every now and then. We talk about women at work, but we don't, I think, really understand how, with the exodus of women that have, left the workplace as a result of COVID, I'm very concerned because this is not only the future of our leaders in a lot of these organizations, it's also an opportunity for us to look at our existing practices and determine what we could be doing better. So as it relates to, representation and seeing other women that are doing what you're doing, finding the mentors, whether they be male or female, in organizations that you create. And then, of course, also, having spaces where you have some flexibility, you have some, opportunity to, be more in control of your time. So those are some of the things that I've seen. I know we're not in offices right now, but I know when we were, having wellness rooms were a huge thing for women, whether they were nursing mothers, whether you need just a space for prayer, meditation, whether you need a space because you have a disability and you just need no stimulation, quiet space every now and then. Those wellness rooms, I think, are huge because it just factors into the fact that different people need different things and you're creating space in your organization for that. So those are the things that I would say that I know that we're doing and that have helped us here at CBRE, and just being able to, ask people what they want, because I don't think one workforce of women want the same thing. And so being able to reach out and engage and ask, what do you want to see here? What would make this a better workplace for you? Because we can't assume anything right now.
Thank you, Garland. It's absolutely true. If you're just joining us, we are talking about the situation of women in commercial real estate, the opportunities as well as the challenges. Cecilia, Garland actually segued us perfectly into my COVID question, because since February, women have lost overall a net 5.4 million jobs, which is more than half of all US jobs lost. So as Garland referenced, this has huge consequences for the future of women in the workforce, especially since just being present is a major factor in being accepted and valued. So how can the commercial real estate industry protect and support women who are underrepresented and undervalued during this particular unprecedented time?
So just as an additional, color to the statistic you provided, I had done some research back in September, and based on U.S. Labor Department statistics, just for the month of September, I believe 865,000 women had left the workforce, and that was 4 times the number of men who had left within that same month period. So certainly it is very concerning, Garland, as you mentioned, and it's hard to know how it's all going to play out in the end. I think COVID has exacerbated so many pre-existing inequities that exist, larger than even the commercial real estate industry in our society, like things to, consistent access to affordable healthcare or affordable childcare. So I think it can be hard to know where to begin. I think anything that can be done to lessen the impact of some of those things would be a good start. I know for some industries, especially, historically traditional ones like the legal industry, where there was still quite a premium put on, face time in the office. The last year has provided proof that people can work from home on flexible schedules. as you mentioned, Garland, without it being detrimental to their productivity or their quality. So hopefully that's something that will continue, even after this particular health crisis has abated, and that will increase the ability of women to attend to other responsibilities besides work, especially when we know that women, still tend to be the primary caregivers for their families. Anything that lowers barriers to healthcare, generous sick time and leave policies. I remember somebody said, well, hopefully after COVID, there, people will actually stay home when they're sick, because, we've seen in stark sort of, evidence of what happens when you don't. Facilitating the need to, for people to take care of their physical, their emotional, and their mental health. I think things like the wellness room when you're in the office is great, and understanding and acknowledging that this is an unprecedented time, and that you do have to ask people what they need or what they might want, and just be flexible in responding to those needs.
Dr. Kim, you're on mute.
Thank you. I clicked it, but it didn't take. If you're listening to us and you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we will be happy to try and answer them as we go. Or there will be a Q&A at the end. Thank you, Cecilia. That's what I was saying. Garland, what would you say are some heartening examples of female resilience?
I think women are natural networkers and like to be around each other. And I think during this time in particular, we have still found a way to connect, whether it's, Zoom, meetups, whether, you're attending something that, an organization you've always been a part of, or you just decide, I'm going to get together with women in my industry, and we just, check in with each other once a month. I'm a part of a mastermind group of women that I met before COVID, but we still kept up every month, and we add more women to it. I've also been added to a group of women in design and architecture that I don't think existed prior to COVID. So I think people are self-organizing. Women are self-organizing to create rooms and spaces for themselves, whether it's through organizations they were already a part of, whether it's through employee resource groups they were already involved with, or just deciding, informally, I need to be around other women who, are experiencing some of these same things that I'm experiencing in this current COVID environment. And so for me, that has been a huge hallmark of just women advocating for themselves, creating spaces for themselves, showing up with other women to ask for what they need, and just find the support. On another, I would say, is female entrepreneurship. I think there's a lot of women who, when you read this report, you think, oh my goodness, like how many women are in these organizations right now who see themselves becoming the CEO, who want to, at one point be a principal or own something, and are just not seeing a pathway, or just consistently hitting their head on a ceiling. What happens to these women? And so I believe these are the women that go out and start their own firms. They are the ones who decide, you know what, I'm still a CEO in my heart. And so I'm going to go out here and, create a space within this marketplace for myself and get more niche, get more focused. And, they typically do this after they've been in the industry for a while. So they have the gravitas, they have the relationships, they have a proven track record to go off of. And so there's been an increase. I don't know whether, maybe that's something for Crew to look at, like where are the women entrepreneurs? Because I think that space is growing. And maybe in a time like COVID, where, you're having to now find out what's important to you, your values become very clear, and how you want to, raise your family or live your life or be in this world. And if your job is not aligning to that in the way that you feel like it needs to, with technology being what it is, I think women are going out and making a way for themselves. And I think that's resilient.
Well stated. It's absolutely one of the beautiful things that comes out of challenge is that kind of evidence of resilience. Catherine, how do you see work toward equity for women as a whole, improving awareness and advocacy for any employee living at an intersection of gender or race or ethnicity or sex or age, et cetera, et cetera? Because as Garland was saying, women are powerful, and the influence they project is also powerful, and they benefit other groups.
Thank you. Thank you for shining the light on this concept of intersectionality, the intersections. And I want to say that I entered into this conversation with respect to all intersections, and also with a newer lens for myself to be looking at my own intersections and others. So I'm learning a lot about intersections. And it's so important to take this conversation from the macro level of looking at women to this micro level of looking at diversity and the multiple levels of disadvantage that women might have when you look through the lens of intersectionality. You know, we cannot solve a challenge that we cannot see. So it's very important to learn to see intersections, I believe. And as an example from the CREW report, it indicated a 10.2% salary gap in the fixed salaries between men and women, where women earn 90 cents for every dollar that men earn. But that gap is wider when you look more closely at the intersection of gender and race, where Asian women earn 86 cents for every dollar, and Black women earn 85 cents for every dollar, and Hispanic Latinx women make 80 cents for every dollar that men earn. And this is just looking at one intersection, gender and race. But there are many, as you mentioned, there are other intersections to look at, such as age and caregiving and ability statuses. So this is very complex, as we all know, and that's why we're here, because it hasn't been worked out. It hasn't been, solved. I see multiple pathways in moving this work forward to improve equity and advocacy. And for me personally, it really begins with education. Without education, I wouldn't even know what race I am. Without higher education, I wouldn't have looked at my own color of my skin. In my role in recruiting and admissions at USD for the real estate program, I'm dedicated to learning more about what gender equity really means for students, and what intersectionality means for the people that I'm talking to. So really looking at and listening to stories around resources and opportunities, or the lack thereof, very important. Both sides of the story, hearing all aspects of the story. I'm thankful that at USD we're committed to a personalized approach, so I do have really good quality time with every perspective who comes to really want to talk about education. And so in addition to what I'm focusing on, I think looking at a variety of resources is really important for all of us, everyone listening today who's curious about this, to be open to learning from a variety of resources, DEI resources, such as articles and white papers such as CREW, watching what your colleagues are posting about DEI to learn more about diversity, everything related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Sign up for newsletters. When you sign up for newsletters for places that you're interested in about topics, you'll get different tidbits all the time that will keep you learning different things. And I really can't say enough, Garland, I really can't, about your podcast. And I really do need to share that your Full Circle with Garland podcast has been hugely helpful to me in learning about commercial real estate professionals of color and their stories, their willingness to share where they grew up, how they grew up, what were the forces that they were dealing with and influences in their lives, or the lack of different opportunities that they had. So thank you for offering that kind of education that's available to all of us through her podcast. Also, I have a few other pathways that, did you want to say something, Garland?
I said, you're so kind. You're so sweet. Thank you so much.
You know, I believe it. You know, I'm all caught up on the podcast.
Yeah.
Waiting. So I really am. It's one of my learning channels, one of my pathways for learning. So education is definitely a pathway. I think creating safe spaces for dialogues is just critical to share and listen to lived experiences. When we're talking about intersectionality and learning what intersectionality means for everybody, it really is about through the dialogue and hearing and learning to listen for different aspects of story and experience. But I also want to recognize that this can be very difficult, because often matters of equity are matters of injustice and matters of microaggression. And they're undiscussable in some ways. You know, if someone doesn't feel comfortable sharing something, it stays silent, and that's where we can't really see it unless we're tuned in and we have some understanding of history. And also choosing a perspective of embracing diversity. And when I say choosing a perspective, it's choosing I think of choosing a perspective of in fostering the environment rather than preventing the unwanted, but what can we do to foster the environment that we're saying we want? And I just wanted to share a couple of ideas, such as practice inviting opinion. You know, practice open-minded listening, where you're not listening to see if you agree. You're not listening to even see if you disagree. You're just listening to see what's being said and to understand what's being shared. And also, I really want to say that today, for everyone listening, you know, one of the resources, pathways, I think, for learning more about how we can move this work forward is with the Kim Center for Social Balance. And, you know, Dr. Kim, I do want to share the Gender Leap. I hope you will say more about the Gender Leap, because it is a proactive approach to assessing your organization around your equity, gender equity, and also learning how you could actually start to build more equity. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about that if there's time today.
Thank you, Catherine. I definitely will. I have a question for Shannon before that. Given the value that we all know exists in diversity, and then knowing that the Crew report also tells us there are reasons to be positive about the industry's cultural direction, such as increased number of women, as referenced before, striving for top positions, and young people joining the industry. As an employer, what kind of impacts do you see these trends having on the future work culture of commercial real estate as a whole?
Yeah, thank you. I think to start with the perspective that inattention to these trends and how the workforce is changing is akin to putting your talent head in the sand. And it's so important that the trend of women striving for top positions, many reports indicate, including the Crew report, lead to stronger decision-making internally in companies with better financial and operational business outcomes and more value creation to shareholders. Whether you're a public or a private company, we all have shareholders. So intentionally cultivating and helping women strive for top positions seems like a win-win business proposition that I don't know if I need convincing of it, just given the data that is out there for people to consume. So the down the road impact will be companies who have leveraged women in leadership should come out ahead with company outperformance, value creation, and earnings. Additionally, strong, resilient, diverse leadership teams, especially given the year we just had, seems to be a wise long-term play most companies should be targeting, and I'd say it's never too late to start. So As I think about young people joining the industry, it's welcome and fantastic news to hear. Otherwise, a talent deficit could occur down the road in our industry, which certainly we all want to avoid, and have the opposite. We want to have an industry that's attractive to young people, that offers them a equal career path, that invites people of all backgrounds and perspectives to participate. And I think the impact to culture would be, for young folks in particular entering into the workforce, could be a consistent call for flexible workforce policies continuing. We've heard that throughout the last few years. I think that that's going to be a continued trend and impact to culture. And, if you just think about, I don't know if this is new news to anybody, but life is dynamic and constantly changing. And so as our employees or people try to balance their unique situation, whether it's caring for a multi-generational household, it's a critical illness, it's a growing family, it's a desire to continue their higher education, all are long-term impacts to companies culturally that companies need to adjust with policies, programs, and most importantly, I believe Catherine mentioned this, a mindset or a perspective that will support flexible working for the long term, because it's here to stay.
Huzzah! Yes. Wise words for the present and the future. I'm sorry, my cat seems to feel the need to appear in every episode of this series for some reason. Thank you all very much for your keen insights, and particularly because you are in the field every day, either seeing employees undergoing some of these situations, or students who are going to come into the industry. Your insights are really valuable, both to the employer and the employee, well, as well as future employees. I will take a moment to talk about the Kim Center's Gender Leap Initiative. It is a two-level initiative in that we have an assessment, a custom playbook, and accreditation directed at companies. And then we take the same core principles and metrics and tools and apply them to the regional level. So our goal really is national cultural transformation through a regional model that can be repeated. And the value of the metrics that we use, which have been academically researched, we really didn't want to make anything up. We wanted to take advantage of all the decades, actually, of tremendous research that's already out there, is to be able to apply the same metrics and measure progress across industries, across sectors, across regions, and most importantly, over time, across time. Because that is one of the things that has been missing for the landscape is, what does it mean in the 1970s that we had a certain level of equity, whether it be pay or opportunity, compared to the 90s, compared to today? We have no idea. And so we felt that it was really important to create that sense of structure as well as community unity around a concerted effort, a focused effort that holds, as you all mentioned, that holds the players accountable for progress, and then also just clearly defines quantitatively as well as qualitatively what the experiences are and what the progress looks like. At this point, we don't have any questions from the audience, but I would like to pose one question to all of you, I guess, as a closer. Catherine, you mentioned the importance of reaching out to high school students. So I'm hoping that some of the news we've presented today isn't discouraging. I'm wondering what each of you would say to a young high school student, of a marginalized population. Let's say women, young women, or transgender even. What would you say about them considering entering the commercial real estate field. And we'll start with Cecilia.
That's a tough one. I think just when I talk to a lot of colleagues in the industry, a lot of them will say that they didn't, enough of them will say that they didn't necessarily start out as wanting to get into commercial real estate. They kind of fell into it through other means. So I think there's definitely an education piece, to Catherine's earlier point, that we can work on in terms of just letting women and other, underrepresented populations know about the opportunities in commercial real estate. I think that would be one place that we could, increase the pipeline coming in. In terms of what I would say to somebody who might be coming in, I think I don't know that it would be that different than any other professional, in terms of just that acknowledging that these structural inequalities still persist, but that's not a reason not to enter, this industry if that is what you want to do for whatever reason. And then I think having knowing that, acknowledging that, because I think, at least for me personally, one of the most frustrating things is when people don't do that. And, it's sort of the classic gaslighting situation. So I think acknowledging that, and then just giving very concrete strategies, like some of the ones we've talked about today, about how in the moment you navigate some of those challenges as you're moving forward in your career.
Thank you. And I want to quickly correct myself. I too am learning the landscape on a daily basis. I differentiated between women and transgender, and that is transgender women are women. So I guess I meant cis women, or other, as you said, underrepresented groups. Moving on, how about Garland?
There's two organizations that come to mind when I think about high school students. One is an organization called Project Destined, and I'll put this in the chat for it to be shared. And this is an organization that's launched maybe about 4 years ago. They focus on high school and college students to create a mindset of ownership. They primarily focus on underrepresented youth because I think, real estate, commercial real estate, specifically in communities of color, has felt out of reach because of a lot of historical reasons, as well as just awareness and exposure, as we've discussed. There's another organization that I'm a part of, or should I say subgroup within ULI, called Urban Plan. And this group focuses on going into high schools and giving kids the opportunity to understand how development happens. So it's like a case study where they are given an opportunity to learn, a fictitious town, 4 blocks, we're going to redevelop it. Who are all the stakeholders involved? What are all the things you need to be considering? They even have a pro forma for them to complete. I've gone through the training as a facilitator and have been involved as a facilitator, and I think it's fantastic. It's also being used as a government or civics class replacement. So if you are an administrator or someone in a high school and want another, opportunity to make civics and government a little more dynamic, this is a great program to, look into. And so ULI has chapters all over the country. And so it's a great opportunity to, see how you can plug in because it's a really fantastic program. And then just in terms of what I tell students is all of this is available and accessible to you. I think that the internet has become an amazing place to just put anything in a search box and find information. So there may be organizations, people around you right now doing this, but you have no idea. And so just look at who's around you. Look at what's available around you, because there are organizations and people, universities, programs that are there that you may just not be aware of are there. And get into it, because it's the way to shape your community. You want to shape your community, you want to shape what's, you know, what is in your neighborhood, it's real estate. It's real estate.
Thank you, Garland. How about Shannon next?
Yeah, thank you. So I think if I could get the attention of high schoolers, I'd be just in awe, because that's a hard thing to do in and of itself. So I feel for all the educators and teachers out there. But if I were to think about, you know, what I would share with high school students, I think the first thing is working at a real estate investment trust. So it's real estate and investment. You know, the thinking behind that is that whether it's commercial or residential, or, you know, whatever real estate is out there, would be to master and develop mastery over finances. Finances are what fund your dreams in life, and finances are what create optionality for you in your life. And so figuring out how to invest in real estate is an important component of what you're going to do and how you're going to create your life, in addition to what my esteemed colleagues on the panel have said, with shaping your community, with understanding, you know, a career path and where you'd like to be in the future, with also being able to figure out, you know, if real estate is all around us, why not get involved in it some way or somehow? So anyway, that's what I would share.
Fantastic. Thank you, Shannon. And Catherine?
Well, if I were sitting with high schoolers, I would ask them what their favorite, where their favorite hangout is in the neighborhood. And if it's probably someplace that's a commercial real estate piece of property land. So it could be the nearby taco shop, or where they like to get juice smoothies or something, and then start talking about what makes that, just chat about what that looks like. But I really think that seeing people in the industry that look like them is really important, very, very important. So as you were saying, Garland, with ULI, I'm also with the ULI and the DEI committee. We're talking about bringing panels together for high school students with people who are that look like them, that are willing to share their experiences with them. And hopefully we can do this through through Zoom. And so I think that needs to be the focus. The most important thing is really pulling together people who are willing to share with them personally, and you know, their professional stories. And a lot more we can do, of course, but that's what I would do. Thanks for that question.
Thank you. I guess it is a fun perspective that commercial real estate really is all around us, from the office buildings to the stores to, I guess, even parking lots. I do also myself tend to think of it as an industry that I know nothing about, but it is around me all day, every day. It looks like we may have a question, final question. No, thank you for putting things into the chat. So with that, I will close. I'm Dr. Hei-ock Kim of the Kim Center for Social Balance. We are doing this series, Workplace Equity Matters, in partnership with the Employee Rights Center. Please join us next month. We do this every third Tuesday. We host a deep dive into a different topic. So February 16th, same time, same channel, and Happy New Year. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.